May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional, and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive.
Alive is an online course that helps you to reveal, meet, and heal the patterns that cause you to lose your most precious resource, your life force energy. So if you're tired of feeling tired, visit starlight-temple.com/alive and use the code podcast to get a half-price discount on this process that aligns you into aliveness. Hello and welcome to May the Life Force Be With You. And our intention is that this conversation connects you to your life force energy and everything that your life force energy has to teach you about love today.
Oh, Karila, that was beautiful. Thank you. And I'm very apt for today's episode because we have our first couple on the show. So this is very exciting for us. And even more so because we're welcoming back one of our very first guests, Katy. But actually, Katy, I have to say, our most listened to episode. For those that haven't listened to Katy's episode, please go back and do so. But just to reintroduce Katy, Katy connects her passion for adventure, dance, and art to her deep love for the earth. And that definitely is what we explored in our first episode. She's guided by an impulse towards human evolution and a desire for ways of living that honor all life and our collective thriving. As a healing practitioner, coach, and ceremonialist, she's informed by her studies with shamanism, internal family systems, psychosexual somatic therapy, that's not easy to say, and meditation. For a decade, she worked in the nonprofit sector, addressing modern-day slavery and climate breakdown. So welcome once again, Katy, to the podcast.
Thank you. It's really good to be back.
It's so good that you're back. I love it.
Back by popular demand and with partner Warren. And Warren is a successful video director. So if you've ever been to a Rolling Stones, Adele, or Elton John concert, you've probably seen his work being projected behind those stars and many more. So Warren got into yoga 18 years ago as a way of continuing his first love, skateboarding. Oh, that's not a topic we've had on the podcast before. And a passion that began at the age of 10. And it's through this path that he discovered meditation, sacred sexuality, and men's work, which is a beautiful thing for us to invite now in that conversation into the podcast. So thank you both for being here today and for very vulnerably being open to sharing what you've learned about life force energy through your relationship. So I'm sure there's going to be so much that relates to many people out there. So again, thank you for inviting this conversation into this space.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So where would you like to start? We've not had this show before. Warren, maybe you could tell us a little bit about, because we had Katy on before, perhaps you could kick us off by perhaps sharing a little bit about your journey through yoga and into, I guess, discovering a little bit more about your life force energy and what men's work means in that context to you.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, like it was, I think it was about I was about 33 and I could feel that my skateboarding was like, I didn't have the body that I used to do. And that was why I was like, okay, I'd heard that yoga was a really good way to get it back. And it did actually gave me a lot more, it gave that body back. So I went back with a real kind of like, I just want to like get my body back. But then through that, I kind of like, it sort of wheeled me in, I wasn't really into any of that kind of esoteric stuff before, if you call it that. And then then the meditation started to come in, and I guess in a way I didn't realize this, but actually my skateboarding journey had already started that. I would just progress to something else. And then really the kind of sacred sexuality and the men's work only really began when I was having this relationship with Katy. And we'll go into it a bit more, but really it was probably born out of like complete frustration, actually, more than anything else. And I think we went to a couple's sort of weekend with
Jan Day,
yeah. And it was actually at the end of that where a man came up to me, which I'd never spoken to during the course, and said to me, like, have you done the Mankind Project? Have you done any men's work? And I was like, no. And he literally did look me in the eyes and said, I think you need it. And I felt it when he said it, and it was true. And, as we'll go further into the journey that we had, I didn't realize that actually the grounding, that I'd actually been very adrift, mainly having grown up in South Africa, which is a real sort of toxic masculinity. And I'd really kind of sort of put males as like seeing other men as being adversaries, basically, as like that's the competition. And didn't realize that actually there was a lot of nurturing in that. And I think I'd outsourced my nurturing from the feminine. That's where I was like something that I could trust in, or it felt like that was the way to do that. And then again, like I was going for one thing, but I actually discovered another, as you do, and realized that the kind of strength and the grounding that I was getting from the men's work meant that when I came to meet Katy in our world, A, I was grounded, and B, I needed less to outsource from her. So
can I just ask, for anybody listening, what is sacred sexuality to you, and what is men's work? Because I feel like I can probably interpret those phrases because I've been in the Tantra world, but somebody that is listening that hasn't, how would you describe sacred sexuality and men's work in that context?
So the first thing that comes up for me is a deeper connection, a deeper, more vulnerable connection that comes with sacred sexuality. And I would say that like my world before that in terms of sexuality, which is like the performer, I would definitely say I was the performer. Like, when I would be with somebody, I think many people that experience this, both male and female, is when I was like driving it from the back, so I was like, pulling the levers, and I'm going to do this move and I'm going to do that move. It's all sort of from my head, basically.
Which is interesting, because a lot of people nowadays collectively are learning sexuality from porn and also from media. So we're learning sex from performance collectively. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of us, our first lesson about what a kiss is something we see on screen. And so I feel like it's kind of understandable that then you're like, okay, it's a performance. Like, because there's no kind of ecstasy rites happening in our early years of exploring what sexuality actually is, without performance. So
absolutely. And I'd say even from my side as well, coupled with a kind of, which I know now, is a kind of not feeling good enough, feeling that I had to prove myself over and over again. So this was like another space as part of the performance, was to get the acknowledgement that I was a great lover, or this person was interested in me, to validate who I was. So I'd say, that's also coming from that kind of world, or having that kind of viewpoint, if you like.
Using sex to affirm the self.
Yeah.
And my answer to the question about how I would define sacred sexuality is the return of it being sacred. So,
and what does sacred mean?
it's a pathway to experiencing the divine.
Mm.
And that's not a intellectual concept. So even saying it, I'm not sure it really helps, because I feel it rather than cognitively sort of knowing it. And I think energetically speaking, I would say it was being able, it's been a journey of being able to connect. And obviously the physical and the energetic is interwoven, right? So, but connecting the energy of the sex center, of the base of the body, up with the heart. And for me, the journey that we had, there was a disconnect there between being able to have the two online together. And that speaks to the vulnerability of being able to open this, really open this in a sexual space. And then I'd say that it's also opening up and beyond to that which is, some might call the divine, but is beyond me as an individual, us, or two people together. It's beyond, it becomes bigger than that. So there's like an energetic linking up and a flow. And that's, yeah, what the best definition I've got right now for what I mean when I say sacred sexuality.
It's a really beautiful definition, and it really resonates, because my guides said recently that sacred is something with energy inside of it. So what makes something sacred is the life force energy is flowing through it. And because of my own experience with Tantra, I've definitely experienced what I call third dimensional sex and then fifth dimensional sex. And the difference is how much energy is happening. It's whether it's just a physical experience or whether it's an energetic and a physical experience. And as you were speaking, I was like, yeah, sex is, so the energy is to me what makes it sacred. And then the sex is it's a pathway of connection. It's a connecting, and so connecting to the divine or connecting to someone else and the divine through someone else, with energy, with life force energy flowing through it, is to me what I would call sacred sex. And I'm interested in what you said about the heart not being able to open, Katy. Because if we're talking about energy being able to move through, and some part of you, one of your energy portals or passageways can't open, then you cannot then get up to the divine. You cannot get to the beyond. So I was just wondering, how did you learn to open your heart sexually?
Yeah, because this is where we should probably say, so far this might sound like some really beautiful journey, but the reason actually that when we shared this story just with friends, we've actually just found that a lot of people have found it quite hopeful, because we kind of went through pretty much like a hell for 3-4 years. Like, it was really, really difficult, and we actually don't know how we stayed together. I mean, it feels like a miracle. Stayed.
How did you first meet? What brought you together in the first place, the very first instance?
We actually met in Thailand. I was living there, working in county human trafficking at that time, and I was just about to move back. Warren was traveling, and we met on Koh Phangan in Thailand. So we just kind of, and because I was moving back, we just exchanged numbers. And it was about 5 years, wasn't it, that we were friends, like we were in touch, and it was like a friends and then sort of friends with benefits. And essentially Warren really wanted to be in a relationship.
Yeah, I can say I was keen, probably from the get-go. Katy, not so much.
And I had, I'd said to friends before, like, oh, when I meet the person I'm going to be with, I'm going to know like that. I used to say this because up until then, attraction had always been very instantaneous for me. And that pull, the physical pull, the sexual pull had always been there. And it wasn't there with Warren. So I was like, oh, he's not the man that I'm meant to be with. So yeah, we had this kind of 5-year time where I knew that he wanted more, and I was like, oh no.
Tell them about the Devi temple. Come on.
I was living in an ashram in India for a year, and I actually prayed. I was looking, so I knew that I wanted a deeper relationship. I think that's all I could say that I knew at that point. I had been in relationships with lovely men before, but I felt like we weren't really going deep. That's all I can say. Like, I knew that there was something more, and that's what I wanted. And I remember praying in the Devi temple that this person wasn't Warren. I did. I was like, please say. So what I can say now is, some part of my psyche, as it does with all of us, the knowing is there. The memories, or what we've disconnected from, is sitting in the body. And that part of me knew that getting with Warren was going to mean getting in touch with some stuff that I had firmly put in
avoiding something.
Oh yeah.
So that is why you were subconsciously you were praying to not have to go to the reason your heart was closed.
Yeah.
Is that the best way to describe it? Or this part of it? I don't believe our hearts are ever closed, but this section of your heart that couldn't open sexually was literally going against what your consciousness was asking for.
Yes.
And what's coming through is that then that makes, that's being conditional. If you're asking for something that is deep and profound and beautiful, then you're going, but not this.
Not that one.
You are literally like negotiating a condition with the universe, which I actually think we do all the time in our, like in our the way you do sex is the way you do everything.
Exactly.
And so like we are very good at trying to contract with the universe when we're asking for something.
I've got to ask, Warren, how did you feel at this point?
So, like I said,
rejection.
I was. Oh yeah. Sorry, what was that? The last bit?
It sounds like a lot of rejection.
Oh, it was a lot, but and we've talked about this before. I think there was a part of me that like wanted to be rejected. I think there was where like I didn't realize this, and in some ways, we talk about like a codependent relationship. I think there was a part of me that like wanted to be rejected because I was just going to affirm it. I was the unrequited love. It was the chase, the quest, because and there was also a part of me that didn't quite understand why. Like, I mean, I was Gunu Gaga from the beginning, and I just couldn't understand why she wasn't into it either. And really, I'd say like a lot of this relationship has been about shattering of illusions, but which has actually been good for me. So it's almost like we've come from two different ways. And I think that's why, in a way, that possibly why we stayed together, and that in some ways, even if we're opposites, there's something that was working for both of us, because we both wanted the same thing, but we were coming at it from totally two very different things.
So we can't on the podcast see your visual, but your hands are moving in a dance that shows that the pull, and there's an energy that's keeping you together, but at a distance, but you're kind of spinning, rotating, never getting closer, but not moving apart either. And I think that so beautifully, it's giving me goosebumps, so beautifully represents that dance that it sounds like you did for a number of years, where strangely it sounds like you were both getting what you needed in order to be able to grow. There was a lesson for both of you kind of moving through that time of exploration. But yeah, that visual is really says it all for me.
I mean, I absolutely resonate with both of you. Like, I feel like I've known that closed heart thing. And I've also known how easy it is to love when you're being rejected, because it's so safe. It's like, I love you so much. And then if they turn around and you're like, what?
God, that's my story too, I've just realized.
To love in the unrequited landscape, and be open there. Because you don't actually have to receive anything, the same wound of opening the heart is the same, just from a different polarity, So yeah, resonate.
But I think we should just kind of give you a few indications here of how bad it was, because so we decide that we're going to get together. We decide. I'm still not sure. Warren's obviously happy because this is what he wanted.
Yeah, I'm like, hooray, it's finally going to happen. It's finally happening.
Yeah. And we moved in together. And we start to argue a hell of a lot. I mean, the arguing is constant. We're picking at things, and basically for essentially over a 3-year period, sex was really difficult. It's like it either wasn't happening, or when it started to happen, it was just awkward and feeling really disconnected. And shortly after getting into the relationship, as we sort of alluded to before, I started to have memories come up from my childhood that I had totally disassociated from. I mean, I had no idea these things had happened to me. And so, I started to have therapy, but, we're in this relationship, and, when you've just started a relationship, you kind of, there's this thing about the honeymoon period, and you're wanting, we think it's so normal that you're in a relationship and you would want to be having intimate connection with that person. And then it's so painful when we came into that space, or, when Warren was sort of coming towards me amorously, all my body even though logically it's totally safe, this is somebody that I want to be with, my entire body physically just wanted to push him away. And that's the space that we were in for 3 years. So it was painful. And we were kind of like, why are we doing this? Is it that we're should we be doing this? Does this make sense? Because this is not, neither of us had experienced this in any of our relationships before this. So, and we'd start to, if you've ever done the eye gazing thing where you sit down and you gaze into each other's eyes,
we listen to that, so we get like, oh, let's read the Tantra book, chapter 1, eye gazing. Great, let's do eye gazing. Okay, 3 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah, so we'd sit and we'd look into each other's eyes, and then the timer would go and you'd sort of share, and we were like, basically we wanted to kill each other. And I'm not saying that metaphorically. I'm saying that the energy that was coming up was like, it was almost like if I relax and open my heart, it felt like an attack was going to come.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is the energy that we were working with in intimate space.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, I can't let my guard down because I feel like I'm going to get killed.
Yeah.
And so it was so hard. I can't tell you.
I know. I know how hard it was. I
how
know.
difficult.
Yeah, I know. When you get inside the trauma of that the body holds, you go animal.
Exactly.
You don't go emotional. You don't go mental. You don't go movie. You go animal in danger.
Yeah.
And that's where the kill thing comes from. You're like, or the freeze, or the rabbit in the headlights is another one.
Yeah.
The we talk quite a lot about the tiredness patterns on this show. Like the two trauma ones are blocking, which is over sovereignty, which is that like rabbit in the headlights. I'm just going to go numb.
Yeah.
Just wide eyes. You just did it, Kay. They're like wide eyes. All right. I'm just going to like lie here and not, and experience all of it and feel none of it.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go into the void and completely disassociate and leave my body, or I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
These are the animal responses.
Yeah.
To the body being traumatized. And the thing is, in terms of this podcast and the theme of it, is those responses play out in our life force patterning all the time.
Yeah.
Until somebody comes along and opens your heart.
Yeah, and for some women I've spoken to, these things surfaced after they had children, actually.
The baby opens your heart.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why I think opening your heart, when someone opens your heart, it's like the most beautiful thing, but it's also horrendous.
Frightening thing. I that psychological safety, when you don't feel that you have that, then everything can feel under threat.
And like I said, it's so strange because cognitively, you know that you're safe. I knew that I was safe. I loved this person. And yet, for 3 years, it just wasn't that connection, all that was showing up in the space. And we did, even though it was so hard, we'd make this time to connect, and we'd have exercises that we try to do as like an entry point to connecting. And for the first probably year and a half, it was pretty regular that whenever we put that time aside, some kind of argument would creep up in the day.
Just sabotage it before we even got into the room.
We haven't even got in the room. And we're in fight mode. Because those parts that are so afraid, it was like, this is like, put a block in place.
And I just want to honor those parts, because those parts are why you survived.
Yeah, exactly.
Survived. Like they are the reason that when you were too vulnerable to be able to handle that experience, those patterns saved your life.
Yeah.
And are the reason you were able to grow up and not be completely a walking trauma, you know? So like, I think it is really important to honor that these patterns, they might eventually no longer serve you. But one of the things I want to say of the Tantra community is it is not okay to be pushing for these patterns to come out too quickly, too fast, when people are not held and not ready, because they are part of how a small self is staying alive.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that it takes time for them to be able to trust, and therefore relax the roles that they've taken on to protect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so one of the big things that's unfolded, you know, for me through this relationship was like a totally different understanding of safety in my body, and safety in a kind of sexual container as well. And you know, Warren was so good at kind of, you know, kind of saying like, there's nothing that this body has to do. Like nothing is being asked of this body. And again, it's like intellectually, I could understand that, but it took a long time for my body to trust that that was true with this man. And also knowing that going into like intimate space, like I began to notice that my body thought there was always an expectation to go into penetration. That everything was kind of like a part of leading to that. And again, it took quite a while for it to really trust that it could just open up. And if that's not what it wanted, it wasn't being expected or demanding, or I wasn't, you know, not giving my partner something that they sort of, I was meant to give always.
Did you still in that time feel love? Was there elements of the relationship that felt that they were compartmentalized? So was your day-to-day interaction feel flowing? There was a connection there that you felt that love and respect for each other? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening would say, well, you know, most men may have left in that situation, or perhaps most women would have said, I can't do this, I'm running away, I need to feel safer in other circumstances. But was there something there, that connection, that love outside of the sexual element of it, that was holding you back, that kind of drew you and kept you together to persevere? Most people don't, right? Is there, Warren, what did that feel like for you in that moment, and what kept you there and kept you strong in those times?
I mean, to be honest with you, we don't even know. I mean, sometimes we even do this thing. We even do like a gratitude to Katy and Warren of the past. We'd like to give gratitude to those people because we don't quite know how you did it. But I don't know if there's two things really. I think one was that we still had a good humor between us. I think we always, from the get-go, we've always had a good laugh. Like we've had in our day-to-day, we were able to laugh about stuff. And I think we share a similar humor. So I think that was one thing that probably saved us. And I think the other thing was that I think somehow deep down, we kind of knew. We just sort of knew that this was, and I think both of us had been in many other different relationships where, like, you know, it's swinging from the rafters, all of this kind of stuff, but it's somehow where we wanted to go to. We knew that this was the right way, even if it was, because that's what I say. Like, cause you asked me, and I don't know, because it was like especially when I compare how it is now to compare to what it was then. I'm like, wow, like just didn't give up.
But I think this is so beautiful because we live in such swipe culture, man. You know, like people just like, we start our relationships now by swiping no or yes, and it's like we've lost the longevity of learning to navigate
or the journey as well. Like it's just like, okay, it's got a little bit hard back.
You know, like you guys had so
know.
many reasons to say this person is not right for me. And instead, you
leaned in.
You made yourselves, you met the parts that weren't right. And I'm seeing it like puzzle pieces. It's like you kind of created the puzzle piece out of the inner work and the longevity love. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I do think that. I mean, I think, when you hear like sort of about arranged marriages and the way, like when you hear people speak about it, that like they learned to love each other.
Yeah.
And I think, we don't have to go back to arranged marriages, but it's like, I think we did. We learned to love each other. And I also feel like the other thing is we both had this real sort of blueprint of what we wanted. And we said this before, like even when we came to the bedroom sometimes, and so many times we would just throw our hands up because we were just like, I just have no idea what to do. Like I'm completely at a loss as to where to go, what to do, how to fix this, how to do this.
You go into fix mode.
How are we, exactly, like, do we break up? Do we do this? Like it's like plateau, complete wilderness. And I think it's almost like now we've almost become adept at being in that wilderness space or in that void space. And now what happens now is that we've also said this as well, we trust the bodies have the wisdom. The bodies have the wisdom to take the mind out. Because the more that we thought about what it should be, is when we would go wrong. If we led with the mind, that's when, even if we did have penetrative sex or whatever, and even if it did seem like it was like the thing, it wasn't. But the times that we let go and we just let it go on this crazy, wherever the body wanted to go, no matter what that was, that's when we're like, oh, wow, okay, this is it. And also then everything expanded as well. That's the other thing. Instead of sex being this like linear, like bam, climb the mountain, da 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 da, it's now to the sides. And that could only have come about from like dismantling everything.
It was a total dismantling of everything that we have both experienced as to what is sex up until that point. And so, what I'd say now, because we are still very much on this journey, please don't listen. We're not pretending to be experts here.
No one's an expert in Tantra. Tantra happens in the mystery.
We're still just making it up.
Tantra is the mystery. Like you can't be an expert on it because it is the life force of the mystery, or that's what it is to me. So like if you can't be in the mystery, then if you're an expert on it, you're suddenly not in the mystery. You've lost
lost the magic.
Yeah.
But it is now like we enter this space and we have no idea what's going to happen and where it's going to go. And like Warren said, there's something about the physical physical and energetic sensations in the body that it's now, whereas before my experiences of pleasure and orgasm, because now there's such a scale, there's so many notes to be played on that, and quite often we're just kind of, the whole thing is playing towards hitting one note. So that shifted, but all the sensation and the energy, it's like there's a depth to it that's opened up and an expanse. So it's like experiencing it in all these, sorry, you can't see my hands, can you? But like in all directions.
Not just one way, all the ways. I actually want to ask about the heart opening though. Did you have a time, this closed heart? Was there a moment where you were like, it's open now?
Yeah.
Did it happen slowly? Was there a moment where it just opened and you were like, this is it? Or...
So it has happened gradually, I want to say. But when you ask me that question, so I never wanted to get married. I had no interest in getting married. We never talked about getting married. It didn't seem important. But then I actually, and this is a slightly another story that I won't go into, but I actually proposed to Warren. And last year we had 2 wedding ceremonies. We had a hand fastening ceremony, and then we had a ceremony at the registry office. And the registry office one, I actually wasn't that bothered about. It felt slightly a bit like doing it for our families. But that night, so on our wedding night, I had we were on the bed. We weren't even fully undressed, and we were just looking into each other's eyes, and I had tears pouring down my face. And it was literally, I have taken ecstasy, the drug, when I was at university, and a sassafras. I've worked with sassafras therapeutically. And that is the only comparison that I can give. It was literally like we'd taken drugs, and our hearts were so open, and we were so connected here from our sort of our minds, our hearts, our pelvis, like everything was just radiating. And it is ecstasy.
Yeah.
It's this vibration of ecstasy, and it feels so beautiful to be able to offer this up. It's like it comes through us, but this is not just for us. I feel like this is something that all of life can be uplifted by.
Yeah.
And so in this, what is a personal journey, this has been a personal journey for both of us, as we've shared a little bit. It's been a shared journey, but I really see this as something that is beyond us. And I wish for everybody to have an experience of this, because it's available. And I had heard people talk about this before, and I kind of just some part of me sort of dismissed it. So I guess I suppose I just want to affirm that it's a thing. This is a thing.
And it's worth going on the hell journey for that thing.
Well, I think everybody has to make their own choice about that. Our journey isn't everybody else's journey. And the story will resonate for some people, and other people have different this is just one way, and there are many, many ways.
There are always.
And I recognize we're in a heterosexual relationship, but I don't think that at this.
Take it from the lesbian. You can have that cosmic experience.
So this is
with 2 women for sure. Like it's
exactly.
Tantra. It's if you can let the energy flow. Like it's if the energy is what takes you there.
Yeah.
And the opening. It's if you can open, hold, change, and be.
Yeah.
Together.
And I think though, when I looked at, like, you can hear it's one thing to hear that said, when people in the Tantra world sort of talk about it, and you're like, oh, cognitively, I really get that. And yeah, I think that's what I want. And yes, I want to experience this. But I just want to acknowledge, like, the actual journey of what that means can be like a really different beast.
It is. It's and it's an ongoing, it's not even like you get there and then every time.
Right.
And then there's also an attachment of getting there and then not getting attached. Do you know what I mean? And then not getting addicted to the ecstasy, essentially. It's Tantra and trauma. They're just, maybe they're 2 polarities of each other. I don't know.
Mm. But one thing I think we haven't said that is, I think it's important that we haven't mentioned, is that when we did decide to get together, one of the things that why we decided to do this is we were like, we wanted a relationship of transformation. And remember, we actually saying that.
That's quite an intention.
That was it. But that's what I'm saying. We had no idea what we were actually asking for. Because I remember reading like this article, I think it was in the Elephant Journal or something like that. It was all about, the place for real love is in the charnel ground where they burn the dead bodies, because that's where it burns away all the stuff you don't want. And then what can rise is what. And I remember saying to Katy, and this will show you the kind of guy I probably am or was then, but I was like, yeah, I'm ready to go to the charnel ground. I'm ready to burn. Take me to the charnel ground. I had no idea. And if I'd read the fine print of what that actually meant, I think I would have said, no way. I would have been like, what? No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But, and that was it, but it is. And the other thing I'd say is we read recently that Tom Kenyon talks about the foundry, that relationship is a foundry because, a lot of your childhood, the hot heat of your childhood forms a lot of these patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to kind of, bend out of these patterns sometimes is to go return to the foundry, which is the white hot heat for that transformation to happen. But that's not for everybody.
No.
Yeah. And now we actually get to the point now where we're like, actually, we still want the lessons, but we'd like them gently.
We ask for them more gently.
Simplicity.
Yeah. One thing I did want us to share in this is because sex wasn't happening, Warren actually went into a very deep journey with self-pleasure. And that has totally transformed like his body in many ways, hasn't it?
Yeah. Thanks for the segue, baby.
Everything is ahead on May the Light Force be with you. Beware of coming onto this show.
I know. But she is right. I mean, I think, again, it was part of that desperation of like, oh my God, like things just aren't working. And that's what I said for me personally, the two keys was the men's work and the self-pleasuring. Because again, similar to the men's work, in reconnecting with my body and reprogramming my body from what was essentially, I'm going to say it on air, wanking, to
that might be the first time we've had that on the show. Thank you.
Go. But it's like masturbating, but I think wanking actually sums it up better. Anyway, it's and then breaking that down from that one note ejaculation to this much broader base that helped me to connect into my body, so that when I met Katy again, I was so connected in my body and I was able to go and flow because I didn't need to have her body, go to penetration and then to ejaculation. Like we could explore a much wider field, if you like. But then also I was able to nourish myself in a way that I needed less of Katy to give me that nourishment, which therefore made more space for us to open up in other ways. So it was like it was me taking care of my own dishes, washing my own dishes, if you like, or, sort of doing my own housekeeping. I was therefore able to be freer in that journey. That's how to say it. And that was a long journey as well. I also want to say that was a long journey where I started off with I think I did it's the one where we first learned about self-pleasuring, but I'd say there was at least a year and a half where it was complete boredom of self-pleasure, where it was the most boring thing. I just was like, I don't feel any sensation, and I try and go for the peak, but it was frustrating, boring. But again, somehow the perseverance came through.
Yeah, he made it into a regular practice. You would sit down and do a meditation or a yoga practice. And I think what I've understood as well is there's so much of the tissue or the skin on the penis or lingam that can be kind of numb, right? The tip is usually the most sensitive, but the rest of the skin has all these nerve endings in that offer just as much pleasure and sensation, but they can be really numbed, and hence the boredom. And so in this, Warren sort of taking that initiative in that time where he wasn't getting sexual pleasure from his partner, and sort of taking that practice to work with that finding that pleasure within himself, all of these nerve endings, the whole length, kind of awakened. And that has really dramatically shifted our experience of when we do have penetration. It's like a totally different experience now, because he can feel so much more, you know, and a similar journey with me and my yoni as well.
And ultimately the trauma patterns are about not feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so like that's why this trauma tantra thing happens, is because the part of you that is surviving by not feeling is so deeply challenged by having to feel.
Yes.
Yeah. And making that connection with the heart, as you said earlier, through the body. And yeah, we don't want to do that because it's vulnerable and scary.
And do you find that there's an openness, perhaps with the friends that you talk to Warren? Because sometimes I feel that, you know, men need a lot of support from community that isn't as available as it is to women. How have you found that in your journey, and how you're able to share, and the receptive, you know, conversations that you have with other men? Do you feel like there's a little bit of awakening on that side as well, and people are curious to understand your personal experience?
Yes, I do. I mean, obviously, I don't like talk about this like every single person. I don't like. I mean, it'd be amazing if we could, and I think probably, hopefully, we are working to a world that is like it becomes more of the norm. I mean, I want to hear young people anyway. I think that's another conversation. But
young people and the sex education, please. It needs to include pleasure.
Yeah,
it does.
Agreed. And also the destigmatization of, like, you know, what would be wanking or self-pleasure. But going back to your question, and I'd say again, that's where the men's group comes in. You know, we often have like a check-in where we talk about physical, mental, spiritual, and now we add an emotional, and now we have a second S, which is sexual. So men actually talk about what's happening with their life sexual. And it's so funny sometimes because we don't do it all the time, but I'm usually the one that pushes it. I'm like, if I'm running that particular round, and if I say, you hear a collective groan, but it's actually really beautiful to actually hear that, because then I will talk about the self-pleasuring, and I will talk about like, and I think men are, because that's I think what becomes more and more when you talk about it, especially with men who've done the same journey as I've done, is that this exists in every man. And it's almost like opening up a treasure chest that you know, there was this, or a compartment that it's been there all the time, but you've never opened that door. And then there's opens out into this wonderland, which you're like, wow, this has been here the whole time. And I've just never opened this door. And I think the way that when more people talk about it, I think more people are more intrigued to realize that actually there is something else. There really is, than what you see on TV or in porn. There's a whole world.
And we're saying men, but like everybody,
all people,
everybody,
everyone, always,
literally everybody.
Yeah,
everybody.
And again, it's like it's not a quick fix. It's not a like open the box or read the book, finish chapter 12, and boom, you got it. There is a journey to get through. And as I said, what you were saying, like there's trauma, that it's just, you have to meet it and go through it.
And teach it how to feel.
Yeah.
Because it's learned not to feel in order to survive through different tactics, you know? So like the only thing you can do is teach it how to feel.
Yeah. And that takes time. Because also that's what, as you say as well, that is something that we've hung on to that handrail for so long. And now it's like you have to throw away that handrail. And like, what? If I throw away this handrail, what else is there? And then you're like, there is nothing else. You're like, that's even more terrifying.
The mystery.
Yeah. The trust. And that comes down to trust. Yeah. Trust that you can walk out into the abyss and you will still be held, but you don't know what it's going to be like. That's the difference. And that's exciting as well. But bear in mind that when we say anything, we also include boredom, anger, frustration, but then also bliss, ecstasy, laughter, excitement,
tenderness.
Playfulness. That was my word.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to say as well. Like certainly my experience with tantrically awakening is that you can't just go for the bliss and the ecstasy, because in order to feel more, you have to feel all of it more.
You don't get to select.
Your whole range amplifies. It's like you feel the anger more, you feel the numbness more, you feel it's like all about like, are you prepared to feel more, period? You know, and that's hard.
It is. And if you're someone who experiences overwhelm, then there's another level of that can feel and be quite terrifying. You know, and so we come back to the kind of the taking the long view and the titration of just little bits, getting the body to recalibrate, integrate, process, because we'd hit what we sort of call the upper limits. So sometimes we'd be in this amazing in a period that was so incredible and sweet and amazing, and then over time of this happening numerous times and us recognizing that there was a pattern there, we realized like we'd hit the point where one or both of our systems was kind of like, this is a bit too much. I'm not sure that I can sustain this. And so the pendulum would kind of swing the other way. So for no reason, something very silly would kind of come up, and one of us would begin to sort of shut down. And we kind of called it this, the upper limits. Well, actually, there's an amazing book called The Conscious Relating. Conscious Loving. Yeah. So it's about 20 years old, but this was kind of slightly our guidebook, you know, and they talk about the upper limits that you can hit into this place where your system hasn't really known this as a baseline. And so it just goes back to this taking time.
And even in practical, just in terms of practical, we've come to recognize this in a way where if we haven't seen each other for a long time, or if we go around holiday, we call it beware of day 3. Day 1 is amazing, day 2 is amazing, and then it would always be day 3, Mount Vesuvius. And it was like we would see it. That's why we even like, okay, day 3 is coming in. Let's check in. Like, where are we at? Like, how's the upper limits now? Like,
That sounds like great practical advice for everybody. Look out for day 3.
For us, it was always day 3.
Find your patterns for your upper limits.
Yeah. Definitely. So if anybody is looking, I'm just conscious of our time. It just always flies by so quickly. If anybody is curious how to unravel some of this or to be inspired by this, I feel like there's a little bit of self work and together perhaps first steps that can be taken. What would you say to someone saying, help, where do I start?
Or maybe what you're thinking, like I always, funny enough, I always say this to my single friends, because they're always saying like, oh, I'd love to do this journey with somebody else, da da da. Like, but and I'm like, yeah, I agree. You have to find somebody who's willing who's willing to meet you on the same side. You got to have the same tennis partner. Like they've got to be able to play the same game. But then I always say, like, I'm like such a self-pleasure activist where I'm like, do the self-pleasure now. Because maybe if you do the self-pleasure now, you don't have to go through like a 3-year wilderness like we did, potentially. Like I think there are things that you can do now that you can literally, you don't need anybody else. That is access that you can start doing now, and all the self-work as well. And call in the universe that there's somebody else who's also doing the same amount of work, and it will put you together to then go deeper, is what I would say.
I love that.
So similarly, like the connection to self, the bringing the sacredness to and honoring to your own body, whether that's through touch, food, all those ways. And if you're in a relationship, I think making a regular time once a week, even if it's just for half an hour, to really check in and be painfully honest, saying we had to say things to each other that we really didn't want to say, but like that level of honesty is such a gate opener. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times this life force conversation comes back to tell the truth.
Yeah. It does.
Like nearly every time we go all over the place and then it comes back to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing so much of your truth. This was a conversation that had so much energy in it, so much intimacy in it, and so much vulnerability, and the first ever wank word. So thank you, because yeah, I mean, permission to feel and to feel more is something that we can always grant each other when we talk in this way. And you've granted it to me this morning. I'm very, very grateful for your telling of the truth of the challenges and the beauty and the ecstasy and the vulnerability of your amazing, amazing journey and its longevity.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Karila, you know what you want to ask now?
Who do we speak to next? Yeah, Warren, I want you to answer.
I wonder if it's somebody like from the Mankind Project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give us a name. Introduce us.
I remember them. I think there would be somebody from like the upper echelons of the Mankind Project. I think would be a good conversation to have, and to talk about men's work. I think that would be very informative. I know that's something I would have really enjoyed before I did the journey, my awakening. Yeah.
And I'll put forward Lakshmi Venugopal, who's based in India and founder of the Inner Climate Academy. And somebody who, any and every time I listen to her, she opens up worlds.
Would you please do an introduction? Would you please link us up emails with these people?
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. I really, really
thank you for having us.
this
Your first ever
conversation.
couple.
Yeah.
And may the life force be with you today.
Be
with you.
We hope this conversation has topped up your life force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the life force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the life force be with all of us.